Okay, we are live.
Yes.
Do you want to guess? 48-hour art check, round 199.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow.
I love it.
I was going to ask what you're going to do for 200. You got any big plans?
Ooh.
I wish I could say that I'm working on an animation, but maybe I'll come up with something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Nothing yet, but we'll probably talk after and figure something out.
Yeah, it's so funny. These things go so quick that by the time you get to 200, you think you're going to do something, and then it's like, I don't know.
I mean, we could just do it ghetto style. We slapped together some pretty good stuff for 88. So
It's true. That is true.
So we'll see. All right. I'm excited about today's topic. This will be fun.
Cool, because I feel bad, but I'm going to basically well, we'll get into that when it gets to the topic, but I'm gonna borrow your guys' expertise and do it live.
Yep. I think that's gonna be really valuable. So here's our teaser for those of you watching later. Stick around or fast forward for about 15 minutes or something. And today's topic is going to be talking about, so I made my book. Now what do I do? So that'll be good. All right. Should we jump in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
Let's see. I guess I can go first.
Okay. What did you get, Scott?
Well, I got my prison tier. My first prison tier.
The beauty of your face.
Yeah. So, and Corey is modeling one of the shirts. I've got one of the shirts as well. Josh,
so
what's up with you, man?
I'm glad I didn't wear the shirt because we'd be wearing the same skirt.
Okay. I could have worn a different
one I bought.
Yeah. So if you haven't been following the what you guys kind of put the challenge out. I'm doing this Amazon merch thing where they kind of ease people into it, and they start you on this tier system, and you start off at like the 10 tier, and so the 10 and the 25 tier are the hardest thing to kind of get out of. You can only upload 10 shirts, and you've got to sell 10 before you can move up, and then same thing, 25. Got to sell 25 to move up. Now, I don't think I have to sell another 25. I think I have to just sell another 15 if I'm correct. I'm still trying to learn all this stuff. And by the way, so we'll on Artcasters this week, we will have somebody on who's a little more knowledgeable about this. So I'm going to kind of pick his brain, and we'll kind of learn more, and I'll learn more together on that. But because I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. But anyway, so with the help of the community and friends and everything, I managed to, and I bought a couple shirts myself, got out of that 10 tier. So now I'm setting my sights on the 25, and I'm just working on some new designs. So that's what I'm working on right now. With St. Patrick's Day coming up, I'm working on some St. Patrick's Day designs because I don't know, I haven't sold any of the Valentine stuff, but I only had a couple, and maybe they weren't that great. But I got some really good ideas for these St. Patrick's Day shirts. So I've got some good slogans. So we'll see what happens, because everyone says that's as far as T-shirts for holidays go, that's the big one. I think that's bigger than all the other holidays. So people like to buy those green shirts and wear them when they go out drinking. So
nice.
So I'm working on that. Most of today I was like looking for fonts and going through some fonts that I purchased and installing them and everything like that. Let's see. I also I uploaded 2 new. This is kind of under the radar right now, but I'll be mentioning more about it. Some people have found them, but I've got a book series that I've also put on Amazon, and I just uploaded 2 new books. I'm waiting for approval on those. I did some freelance work. I premiered another video today for 100 days of, I keep saying 100 days of making comics, making comics 101.
Nice.
Worked a little bit on the manga version of the Comic Maker Toolkit, which Josh's wife, Mai, graciously helped me translate a lot of that stuff to Japanese. So I've been putting that stuff in there. I think yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've been up to. Oh, one other thing. If anyone in the chat or any of you guys, if there's some people have asked about particular shirts, if there are any that you want to see that you're interested in getting, let me know and I can upload. I just uploaded the Fueled by Sriracha one. So that one is live and I'm working on some other ones. But like, for instance, like the one with the CircWorks logo, it says CircWorks Mad Science Supply Company, all that. I didn't upload that because in general, I don't know that many people that would want it, but if there are people that would like that design, let me know. Or any other design that you've seen that I've done, if you want to see that on a t-shirt, let me know. And I've got a few slots opening up that I got to fill. So
cool.
Love it.
That's awesome.
And you guys might have noticed a hashtag, but there'll be another tier if he opens another tier. So if you notice something about
if I can hit that 25, I'll have both, and I keep pointing the wrong thing. I'll wear this until I hit that 25, at least on the videos. Not on my videos. A lot of those are pre-recorded. So
I think that's amazing. And honestly, Scott, major power to you for sticking to your commitment.
Well,
and
it's not an actual tattoo, so I don't have to give you too much credit.
Now I'm just
tell people it's real, like it's a legit tattoo.
It's all legit.
But
if you get a real tattoo in your face, it should be like a little icon of an actual T-shirt.
I agree.
Start a design trend.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
I don't think my first tattoo is going to be a face tattoo.
Yeah.
Right.
If you guys want to help Scott push this from the tier angle, just post about what you buy for Scott.
Oh, yeah, reviews. If you guys and Corey and Josh, if you don't mind giving those shirts reviews, that's helpful.
Oh, on Amazon.
Even if it's just a 5-star or whatever star review, you don't have to even leave anything. But
And if you post about it on social media, just hashtag it with prison tears to get Scott there. All right. Cool. That's awesome.
Okay. So I got this done.
You should have a theme song going while you show that.
That is classic. Straight up Brevian.
Yeah, we got some Brevian action going on there.
The sausages.
The thing that is funny about this is that my poor wife is so sick of this song because my daughter loves it, and so we've been watching it. We've been watching it over and over again as I've been trying to choose which lyrics I want to put in there or whatever. Anyway, so there's that, and then
I'm going to give a little context for anyone that doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, Jim Lujan has finished a series called All That Glitters. That's animated, and he's the one that I'm doing the animation or Indie-mation show with, and we're about to do our third episode a week from tomorrow, where we're both going to show our process of how we animate.
I love it.
And so that'll be kind of interesting. But anyway, he stitched it together into a feature film and added a bunch of new footage, and it's funny, and I just like making fan art for stuff I like. So there's that, and then I finished this guy as part of what I'll show you next. But this is the start of a longer animated film that I'm going to do, which is an undisclosed amount of time right now, but that's kind of what we're looking at for that. And so, and then I said that I would test out this thing. I've got to tell you about it and then show you because it's loud. So basically the idea was that I wanted to see if I could automate the voice control, so that if I could automate the animation of the mouth of a character without having to go and animate it myself. And so what I did was, and if this doesn't make any sense to you, I'll just show you the thing. But what I did was I took the decibel levels of the audio track and I turned those into numbers, and then I use those numbers to move the joysticks controller, which is a plugin that I use. And the joysticks controller is animating the mouth. And so as that controller moves based on the levels, then the mouth moves. And so this is the result of that.
That is why you fail.
I've seen enough. Let's get to the bottom of this.
So you can kind of see that it's not perfect and it's really shaky. But the general idea of it is that it's close, and I think I could get close to where I wanted and then manipulate it after, or there might be some ways that I can smooth that out or tweak it. But I just thought it was kind of funny. And then somebody afterwards, I didn't have time to do it. I was showing somebody afterwards, and they was like, dude, why didn't you do Skeletor?
That is why you fail.
I've seen enough. Let's get to the bottom of this.
So anyway, and you'll see on the right side of the screen, those are going to be like my carousel of the for Instagram of the tutorial that I'm going to make on how to do that. And that is proving way more time consuming than I thought it would be. So I didn't get as much done as I wanted, but I am pretty excited about where this is. And there's a lot more that's going on with this that I'm not showing here just because I didn't have time to render it all out, because there's a lot of other things that I did with it. But like the chain moves and the engine shakes and the wheel turns, and it's all fairly accurate and rigged, so I can do some stuff with it. And then the other thing that I said I was going to do is get the story going for this short. I figured out and wrote the dialogue for the final scene and the opening scene. I need to solidify an inciting incident to get everybody going with it all. But I actually know where the story is going now and where it's starting. And so now I've just got to figure out the middle stuff, which I have basically like rough plotted, but I don't have the details of like the beats and things. And so progress on that one, but not like a complete. So
Okay.
Anyway, so that's
Cool.
that's what I did.
It's a ton. All right. I'm gonna underdo it because everybody came fairly close to getting theirs. I literally didn't get much done other than the copy on the interior page. So all of it's hand lettered. So, and then it has like a little shout out to Sam Keith that I like to do in all my legalese that you guys can kind of like check out and find once the book's printed. And that'll tie probably into our subject today. Because while I was working on this, and then I've already laid out the other part, which is going to be like a little link to like the suicide hotline and stuff, because the story I'm writing deals with suicide. I don't want people to think I'm endorsing it.
Right.
And so I'm going to like link to the National Suicide Hotline like at the end and give people like a little bit of a window of a place they can go if they've suffered from like mental illness or anything like that. And I have that all drafted out, but I still have to hand letter that. But while doing it, a lot of what will be our topic kind of started coming up because I started thinking about logistics. And as it gets closer to something happening, the logistics become a lot more real. And so it'll be an interesting topic when we get to it. So, yeah.
Cool.
But I didn't hit my mark. I was hoping to have 2, and I only got 1. So that's partially due to extended overtime. But yeah.
If this were a better show, I would have a sad trombone or fail trombone.
Or maybe we need a whale that just swims across like a fail whale.
Right.
Just like an animated whale that'll just drop on the person.
All Hitchhiker's Guide style. Yeah, that'd be good. Cool. Okay, so how about challenges, Scott?
Challenges, just a bunch of like stuff that occupied more time than I was hoping for it to. Like today, I was gonna listen to some music while I was doing stuff, so I went on to this streaming service that I subscribed to, and I paid for the premium membership, and it was showing me a bunch of ads and everything, and I'm like, I'm paying for this, and so I spent way too much time trying to figure out why it was doing that. It's like this service that I signed in. I mean, I've been with it for a while, and since then it's been bought out by a number, like probably 4 different companies. And every time a new company buys it every time they buy it, they mess it up. I mean, it was when I opted in, it was really cool. There was these really cool functions, like there was this like a slider bar where you can do like related artists, and so you can kind of slide it as far as if you want it to be really different, or if you want it just a couple of different artists that are similar, just cool stuff like that. That I don't know if I'm not, I don't have like Spotify or anything like that. I don't know if some of these other services do that, but I had these really cool features, and they end up getting rid of all those, and but anyway, so the only reason I'm with it now is because they've got a couple of like stations I like, theme stations. If they get rid of those, I'm gone. But anyway, I tried to figure it out. I couldn't, so I had to email them, and I couldn't get into my account to figure anything out. So that just took way too long. But these little things, and I thought, well, I just won't worry about it now. But then I'm like, if I don't worry about it, I've got to deal with this sometime. So I just tried to figure that out. So anyway, not really art related, but it just took up a lot of my time. The only other thing is still trying to figure out like uploading these shirts and getting rejections and stuff. I mean, this last one I uploaded the Sriracha shirt. It bounced back, but this time because I went through every word trying to figure out it was trademarked or whatever, and I didn't get dinged for that, but I did get dinged because it said that I couldn't put it on kids t-shirts. So I don't know if that's because it's like a hot sauce, or because when in describing, you try to throw as much keywords in there as you can. So one of the things I put in there, because it's a rooster, I put cock, and so I don't know, unfortunately,
that's probably it.
Yeah,
that's
but
probably
the thing is, I mean, it's like the context. That's what it's called, and I don't know if anyone's gonna be searching that for a rooster, but I put it in. So, but I mean, that's like,
if you mix the fact that there's probably also the word hot in your description. So if you that's
the thing that I found out. That's the thing I found. I thought I was going to get dinged for that because apparently hot sauce is trademarked. I didn't realize that. But so in one part of it said I put pepper sauce, and in another part it did say hot somewhere. So I was worried that it was going to put those together and was going to, So
whereas it might have combined hot and another word that got you flagged for children. So that's
maybe I can see that, but still, I mean, that's the problem is the algorithms, they don't understand context. So a lot of this stuff isn't, and most of it, like I said, isn't even something that appears on the shirt itself. It's just a description to try to get people to find it. So it's you got to play their game and figure out. And if they would just tell you what's the problem, that would be fine, but they don't, and you got to figure all this stuff out. But anyway, so hopefully I'll get better at it, because it's just, I mean, when we have this guest on it, one of the things I'm going to ask him is like, because I hear these stories of people that say, oh, I uploaded 200 designs today, these people in these bigger tiers, and I'm like, how do you do that? I mean, I can't even figure out, because I'm writing descriptions for all this stuff, and I'm actually putting time into the design. So I don't know when they say that. I don't know if it means that they're, it's one piece of artwork, but they're putting it on different T-shirts, or I have no idea.
It means they hired somebody on Fiverr to put up.
Well, yeah, a lot of them did. But even if you do that, I mean, just the upload process, and because the one thing I know that they do usually pay attention to is the keywords and stuff, because they're marketers, and they know how to do SEO and stuff like that, and that takes a long time. I mean, they're probably not writing descriptions like I am, where it's like, because I can write ad copy, and I'm trying to make it sound good, even if it's irrelevant, even if it's just people searching for keywords. But I don't know. So anyway, I'm figuring it out. So we'll find out. I'll keep learning and keep adjusting. So
Cool.
All right.
Uh,
What were
so-
your challenges?
for my challenge, I'm going to explain maybe something that's super boring, but this took way longer than I thought it would. So this part of this equation right here, this is saying get the level of these keyframes, but those are decibel level keyframes. And so they're negative and approach 0, but I need them to be positive and bigger than like a range from 0 to 9. And so what I did is I multiplied it here by -10, but then I needed that put the controller position in a different spot. So then to there, I had to add 200. If that doesn't make any sense, I barely followed it myself, but that's kind of like what all of these say is that's what I'm trying to explain is you basically convert this and then you go through and you pick whip it there like that. And then right there, there's the pick whip link. There's the multiplier, which is a negative multiplier, which inverts it and then makes it bigger. And then there's height adjustment, which is based. And each of these numbers is a variable that isn't fixed and is nowhere on the internet because it's custom. And so that's the main challenge, other than just being really tired all the time. I can't figure out what's going on. I'm wondering if there's something wrong, but I'm just exhausted by the time I'm getting home lately.
Coronavirus. Maybe.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's something like that. But yeah, I mean that's that, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. That, and then this went pretty quick, but I mean I should have got it done months ago, and it was there's a little bit of a struggle there for some of the things that I was trying to do, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wow.
How about you, Josh?
So my main challenge is just work hours being increased a lot, and then on top of that, like a lot of like projects like around the house that totally got distracting. Like we're making a lot of progress on cleaning a garage that's just piled with stuff for the last 5 years, and so I've been building some shelves and like kind of going through a lot of stuff we have in storage and trying to kind of Marie Kondo it a little bit. And so that's been really time consuming. And I did also get totally distracted with so there's a guitar I'm modding, and generally with guitar parts, you'll buy like this part of the guitar that's like pots and electronics. And so the pot is like what attaches to like the volume and tone knob.
Right.
And on my Strat, this is like the first guitar I ever owned that was like a legitimate guitar, because the one before that was like a piece of plywood called a Synsonics, in case anyone's ever curious. But like this one was my first like Squire, and it's like a modded Stratocaster, so it's not a stock shape. And so when I bought new pots for it and new electronics, they don't actually fit through the hole. So I had to basically use now I'm blanking out on the term. It's like a router, like basically a Dremel tool. Sorry. So I had to use a Dremel to kind of like decrease the wood on the back side of the guitar in the area that the electronics go through, so the pots could fit through. And so I did that, and it actually worked, which made me feel really cool because I suck at handyman stuff. And next thing I have to do on it is some soldering and stuff. So I'm starting to feel like a dude, like working on stuff in the shop and being like, oh yeah, because I was trying to remember, like, what do you use for just shaving a whole chunk of wood a little shorter in a small area? And my brain had to go back to like Boy Scouts. And I was like, oh yeah, a Dremel tool. Like, because I used to use those when like building like models and stuff when I was a kid. So
I love Dremels.
Yeah, it was rad. It was, I mean, they're a pain in the butt. The thing that sucks about the sanders on the Dremels is like when you burn the sandpaper, it's like, oh man, like that's the only thing that sucks. You have like this really good movement and then it just goes poof. You're like, whoa, okay. Gonna set the setting a little less. But yeah, so that was cool. But still total distraction. And actually, I think that'll tie into our topic too, because I think one of the things that's holding me back on kind of finishing the interiors of this book is I need a clear game plan for where to go next. So I might be subconsciously delaying it, and that's
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool.
So yeah, whale, boom.
Okay, real quick, plans. Scott, what are your plans?
My plans are to finish up some of these t-shirt designs, get those uploaded. Let me find, let's see what's on my Trello board for tomorrow. What else? Yeah, I have to work on some B-roll for I had 3 episodes that I edited of Making Comics 101 that I need to do the B-roll, so I just need to film that. And I got to start getting a newsletter put together to send out. So that's what I'm working on. And yeah, thanks. I was going to comment, Frank, on your comments, but if I post any, okay, I didn't even see this thing where it says all. Oh, that's cool. Okay, never mind.
No, the all is because we're live on Twitter and on YouTube.
Oh, okay. So if I put a comment in, it's going to come up on whoever's channel I'm on, and not me, and not as me. So I'm not commenting. That's why. But
yeah. So, yeah. As far as my plans, I plan to finish this Instagram carousel, and so you can see, like, I thought it might be interesting to show like my process of getting those to like slide together. So I put 10 artboards together, and then I kind of have my fonts and everything already kind of all laid out according to my brand. And this looks really convoluted, but I'm hoping to clean this up so that slide by slide it makes sense, but when you look at it all at once, it kind of looks like a mess. But this will kind of go through, and this is what I was talking about before. So hopefully I can figure out a way to make this make sense, whatever. But I'll get that done, and then I'm working on a longer video, a longer one than I've done in a while, where I'm explaining my animation process. And so I'm going through and I'm talking about, I've developed about 6 different things that I typically do. And so I'm going to have a little like 2 to 3 minute segment explaining how to do each one of those. And so it'll end up being, upwards of like 20 to 30 minutes long, but hopefully packed with really valuable content. So those are my plans. How about you, Josh?
So I want to finish the interiors, and I have a couple ideas for the book cover that I'll probably put forward in the topic that I want your guys' feedback on as well. But yeah, I definitely want to have the interiors inked and all the drawing assets done so that I can start formatting the interiors for 8.5 by 11. The nice thing about the size I'm working in, it allows about that much space. It's a little, about 1/4 of an inch to put in page numbers, which will be helpful because I think it's going to be something around 100 pages
Cool.
on the interiors. So that'll be fun. But yeah, that's where I'd like to be, is like preferably at the book formatting stage. And that's harder to predict how long that'll take because I want to be a perfectionist about it. I don't want to rush that.
Yeah.
So there's less back and forth when trying to get it printed and stuff. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So good to move on to the topic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take a break here, and we'll be back in a moment. Josh, why don't you kick us off?
All right. So for the topic today, I actually thought it would be valuable to use this forum. Like part of the point of the 48-hour art check is to have other artists to keep you accountable, but it's also to have other artists to throw ideas at and kind of see how they work. And I'm at this strange point that I think a lot of artists will get to when they're working on personal projects, especially big vision stuff, where I've invested, years of my life into making a work with the goal of completing it and kind of an abstract idea of what I would do with it once it's complete. And I'm at the finish line. And so at this point, I've had a few things come up that are different possibilities of where I can kind of go. And I'm kind of torn between them. And so I wanted to kind of throw out some of those options and kind of get your guys' read on it. So does that make sense?
It does. You
All right.
want to tap into my vast experience in publishing self-created books.
Well, I think you guys have a good gauge and a good pulse on like what sounds right, like what makes sense, because you guys all promote work, make work, and are active on social media and stuff. So maybe you guys will have an idea on this.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to understand, like, it's a stupid thing to say that marketing is marketing. Because there are a lot of significant differences, based on industry and niche and everything, but also marketing principles and advertising principles are pretty solid if you understand them from a principle-based thing. And so one of the things that I like to teach is I teach some social media classes. I don't teach like, this is what you do on Facebook and this is what you do on Instagram. What I end up teaching is, like, people make purchases for these reasons. Like, people want to, they have these type of motivations for their behaviors. And so if you look at it from like communication amongst people, from a creator to a group of people or to individuals, then you can kind of supersede channels and algorithms and industries and things like that. So anyway, that's just me overcoming the fact that I haven't promoted a book that I've made yet. So I'm gonna kind of eavesdrop on a lot of this as well, because I do have my the Tongue Cut Sparrow finished. And I haven't done anything with it yet. I've kind of been waiting to do it with Josh. We kind of planned a while ago to kind of promote together, not together, but at the same time. So what are you thinking? And my question is, when you get into making decisions about that, what are the opportunity costs? So there are things that can happen concurrently. I can do this and this. And there are other things where it's like, I have to choose between these two paths. If I go down this path, it kind of burns the bridge on the other. And so as you're going through, say, this is something that I could do concurrently with everything else, or this is something where I have to make a choice between this one or this one. So what are some of the options that you're kind of toying with?
So I'm glad you made that distinction, because that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm actually at a crossroads at the very beginning, in the sense of kind of like the objective. So initially, my thinking this whole time has been to publish it through KDP. I think at the time I was planning on publishing it through the other Amazon publisher that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, right.
Not Prime, but what was it?
Create Space. Yeah, which is now pretty much KDP.
Yeah, and now it's KDP. And my thinking was to use KDP for the printing, because the price is actually pretty remarkably low for a black and white book. And so I kind of high-fived my past self for doing that. The quality has come up to the extent where I think it'll be good. And I feel like as long as I get the proof and it's not a terrible way to read the book, that would be a good first step to like at least start conventioning and promoting and have copies to give out, stuff like that, and copies to sell, print press copies to send to press, and so on. And so I had this rough idea that what I would do is run a Kickstarter campaign, order basically those books through KDP, and then fulfill those orders. And then with whatever excess or profit that I make from that Kickstarter, then be able to fund convention copies and other extras, like, different things for the booth, different products that I make for the Kickstarter itself. And so that seemed like this really appealing idea. But then I started thinking about it, and I was realizing, like, would it be as beneficial to take all that promotion work that I would do to drive someone to a Kickstarter and just like straight up put it on KDP and put that promotion work and those promotion efforts to directly having people get the book, rather than having to kind of raise a specific amount and hit a cap and spend, close to 2 weeks to possibly a month, like building up this promotion to try to kickstart something, in order to also then end up in a fulfillment nightmare at the end of the scenario, where I'll have all these books that I had to order, pay shipping on, and then pay shipping on again to send out in a fulfillment that won't be as efficient as it will be just direct from Amazon.
Okay, so we're talking about a number of things. I want to make sure that I don't miss some of the stuff. So the first question is, should you crowdfund, use the excess to buy some books, and then KDP direct fulfillment kind of print on demand situation after that, or should you skip the crowdfunding and just jump into print on demand? So I have a couple questions because I've thought about this a lot, but what do you say on there?
There's one other concern, right? Which is initially I was thinking so there's two kind of prong things that I'm facing right now. And these are kind of immediate things that I need to have a game plan as I get closer to finish. The other thing was that I was hoping to do before releasing the book was the idea of getting pull quotes.
Yeah.
Which is something I did for my first book. But then I realized the advantage of print on demand is that I could actually put out the book. And then if I get significant pull quotes from reviews from different, like if I can finagle them from different well-known cartoonists and stuff like that, I can just update with a new edition of the book that has those pull quotes. Mm-hmm. So the delay for pull quotes doesn't necessarily have to happen. And once again, my main concern, so there's a two-pronged concern that kind of touches both of these, which is time investment and marketing efforts, and like what gets books in people's hands. And to me, I'm torn, because I kind of think, like in a scenario where you're trying to do a mass print run of a book, Kickstarter makes a lot of sense. But in a case where you're printing print on demand books and you're trying to drive traffic to Amazon to up your ranking, right, on that book so that the book sells more, because Amazon honestly is like the best interpreter of how well your book will do, like in this day and age in the book market. So if your ranking goes up on Amazon, in like the graphic novels section or whatever, that equates to more sales. Like the higher your ranking, the more you're getting eyeballs of, like, the majority of book customers in the world are buying through Amazon now. So that's not to say I wouldn't be ordering books to sell one-on-one, but it's just the idea of like, could the effort that would be put into a Kickstarter be better served put into promoting something that already exists? And that's kind of the kind of conundrum I'm in.
Okay, so I have a few questions.
Okay.
Is there a reason that you wouldn't use Amazon fulfillment to ship the Kickstarter rewards?
I mean, that's a possibility, but that still puts like people well, there's a couple things. Like one is I'm not sure how it works with like author copies. Like Scott might be able to kind of chime in on this since you've used it. Could you like buy an author copy and have it shipped to a bunch of different places?
I think they have to go to the same address from what I understand, but the author copies are pretty inexpensive. And I mean,
100%.
I mean, you were correct in the fact that you would probably have to have them shipped to you, and then you have to ship them out. But also consider, I don't know what your price point on your book's going to be, but people are willing to pay more for a book. Like most of my tier for a single issue of Young and the Dead was around $25 for a single issue, and there were some extras thrown in there too. But that's a single issue. I'm not going to be able to sell a single issue for $25. So, I think people on Kickstarter are willing to, pay a little more for the product than you would normally sell, and some of that will cover that extra cost of the shipping. And with as far as the shipping to the customer, you can set it up however you want. You could set it up so the customer pays the shipping, or you can work that into the price.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that you have shipping after the fact, because if you include shipping in the Kickstarter campaign, Kickstarter takes a cut of that shipping.
And and also you got to be careful. You got to know exactly how long your production time and all that stuff is, and when the post office is going to decide that they're going to raise the shipping rates, because they do it like every year. And it's really destroyed people.
So here's one of the catches, like that kind of that counters that a bit, like, and because I hear that. So the thing is, like, it's a full graphic novel, so like I'm imagining cover price is going to be somewhere around like 20. We'll see. But if people have Amazon Prime, then they're not paying shipping if they order through Amazon. And then here's the thing: if I say got a fully funded Kickstarter, right? Let's be totally absurd in my hypothetical, and like 2,000 people buy a copy.
Okay.
According to Amazon, even though I bought 2,000 copies, author copies of the book, my sales on Amazon are at 0.
Okay. This is where I wanted to interject. When I say Amazon fulfillment, I'm not talking about KDP. I'm talking about actual Amazon fulfillment, where they offer you give them a SKU, you ship them the product, you have it barcoded and tagged before you ship it to them, and they fill it one at a time. That doesn't drive up your Amazon sales, but you are using Amazon's shipping price and not your own personal shipping price, which is significantly lower. And you can still, on that SKU, you can have like a Kickstarter version of that book that would include posters, postcards, stickers, pins, whatever else, as long as it was all in a single package. So that's what I was asking before, because you had mentioned as a negative of doing a Kickstarter, the fulfillment option, which really could be quite easy because you ship one shipment to Amazon. You don't even have to print it with Amazon. You could, if you get 2,000 people, you're going to get a better print run price printing that yourself directly with the printer, most likely. And then you get that to you, or you have your printer ship it directly to an Amazon warehouse. Then you just upload a spreadsheet of all of the people that backed. They will fulfill all of those orders for you.
So here's the kind of weird thing is, like, because I've looked into this, I don't know how much difference in cost it would be.
Oh, really?
For a perfect bound book of this size compared to Amazon. And that's kind of the appeal of this, is like, it might be $1 cheaper. Maybe that would be at most what I could get it for.
Okay.
But I'm not going to be doing a high enough run to where it's going to be a significant difference on a per issue cost for costs that I ordered myself. So at this point, I was just like thinking, if I'm like pooling everybody and sending them to Kickstarter, like I'm like, pulling a bunch of people. And of course there's people who specifically go to Kickstarter to find new things. And so that can kind of create a momentum. But what I've noticed for like most people I know who've run Kickstarter campaigns, it's generally generated like at least 60% of it's generated by themselves.
Right.
And then by people they know, and people they know talking to people they know. And then their own self-promotion, like going on podcasts, going on different venues and stuff like that. So I've just been thinking, like, what if I took that same effort and just sent it direct to an Amazon link, and every sale is upping the ranking of the book. So it's in real time actually mentioning, like, there's actual real gain for the amount of books that are sold. And, because the Amazon ranking game is unfortunately kind of the book game now. And so to me, the appeal of that would be getting people directly to the book, getting the book directly into their hands, the confidence that like this thing actually exists, the ability to quickly get that to reviewers, the ability to spend those efforts that I would spend trying to get people to promote a Kickstarter, promoting the actual product, like cutting out a step in that process. And this in marketing, it's like when you ask people in ask, right, you only get so many. And the more complicated the ask, like the less effective your marketing is, right? So in this sense, it's like the ask is literally, here's a product, buy it. There's no like, oh, here's some risk, like, please fund this thing. It's like, no, this is a finished book that I've worked on for 5 years. And most people I know, I don't think would have a problem sharing that.
Okay, so here,
and so I'm kind of thinking, if I were to do it just like I did a Kickstarter campaign, but just take out Kickstarter and just give people the book direct.
Right. And here's my thought, because on my book, I worry about the sense of urgency, like the gamification of purchasing and pre-ordering that Kickstarter has built into their system. Becomes an event in and of itself. Just this is a bad example. I've been intending to buy one of Scott's shirts, or 2 or 3 of Scott's shirts, for a long time, and it's just, it comes up and it's like, oh yeah, I should do that.
I'll buy that next week. You're right.
But it's like
there's no like, if you don't buy it today, it's not going to happen.
And so I think I think if you have to ask yourself, is Kickstarter still a newsworthy event? Because I think you could, I don't think I can on my book, but I think on your book, you could literally say, you're hitting the zeitgeist really, really well right now, because everybody is talking about mental health. There's a big movement right now on college campuses, QDP, to get non-professional people trained to recognize, identify, and suggest help for those people that are at risk for suicide. And so you could literally, and I don't think that this is like one of those like evil marketing, twirl your mustache ploys, because I've read your book and it is good and it is helpful. And I believe somebody that is struggling with those issues would benefit from owning it and reading it. And so you could literally use a Kickstarter as a newsworthy event to give bloggers and podcasters and journalists and news outlets an excuse to talk about this issue, because many of them have kind of hot button issues that they want to talk about, and they will take any reason, hey, this guy, here's a cartoonist that's, dealing with this type of thing. And then here are the messages that I want to get out about this. And so they're not promoting your book because they don't promote things, but they're using your book as basically it's a PR campaign getting earned media. Now, the question is, could you do that without Kickstarter and do a pre-order campaign on Amazon? My thinking is that pre-orders on Amazon are good because you get that initial boost and you can rank on the first day. If you've got all these pre-orders, it counts it on the day that it ships. And so that's significant. There's a lot of good stuff with that. but I think there's a lower sense of urgency with an Amazon purchase than there is with this ticking clock that counts down on Kickstarter. But also, going with Kickstarter negates that initial boom of ranking sales that will help in the long term. My concern with my book is I worry if I have the clout, the sway, the persuasion, the audience, whatever you want to say, to move any significant numbers either way. And so I feel like the gamification aspect of Kickstarter might be helpful.
Yeah.
Because my biggest concern is I put my book on Amazon. I tell people about it. I spent 6 months on it. I sell 5 copies. And then I get tired of talking about it and it goes away.
Yeah. So that's the part that because I can see what you're talking about, especially in the sense of like kind of giving a limited resource feel to it,
Right.
But I also feel like, what if I just urgently promote it every single weekend? You know what I mean? Like, just treat it just like a Kickstarter just for a year, and like hustle it, promote it, like every weekend, send out a few copies to press, like try to get local press first, do the Homeboy Does Good story where it's like,
Right.
local spends 5 years on, and print up some press releases, like fancy looking press releases. I'll probably use cat print for that, which is Scott's recommendation, but they look excellent. You'd have no idea it wasn't a marketing firm sending it. And then the neat thing about cat print, because of the low order quantity, like I could do a press release geared to the local paper. I could do press releases geared towards other things. And the neat thing about not having the Kickstarter kind of looming is it allows like a playground for all sorts of different techniques without like that urgent deadline. You're right, though. The downside is, can that build enough? But I do kind of feel like with the book I'm dealing with, I think if I can get people to read it, I think they'll talk to 2 other people. I think it's one of those books where it's like, I think that when people buy it, I think they're going to talk about it. And I think they're going to talk about it to other people. And I think especially if I kind of create that as the goal, tell 2 people about this when you read it,
Let me suggest something. When you print the book itself, I would give in the book pass along cards, some sort of mechanism by which people can say, I loved this book. Oh, so-and-so really needs to read it. She would love it, or he would really get a lot out of this. Oftentimes those thoughts happen and are fleeting. But if those thoughts happen and you get to the end of the book and there's a perforated tear out sheet that says, give these bookmarks to your friends, or do you know somebody that could benefit from reading this book? Give them this postcard.
That's brilliant.
You wouldn't be able to do that with KDP unless you are ordering the books and shipping them yourself, and something you can put in there.
You could put it as a page that isn't perforated and just tell
to rip out.
Rip this out of the book.
Yeah.
Because it's perfect bound, and so it'll rip out easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea of doing a kind of almost like a grassroots campaign with it too.
Right.
Like literally starting with like the hundreds, starting with our community, and then just kind of building out from there. And literally just going back to the whole shameless self-promotion thing that got me into illustration in the first place. I feel like that ground game kind of mentality is what people take on when they do Kickstarter. And that's why Kickstarters succeed. I do agree, though, the downside, the one thing that I'm not going to be able to get around that is the benefit of Kickstarter is, first off, I've talked about this with Threadless, and I've experienced that in my own career, right? There was this beautiful point with Threadless where the visibility you would get from a success on Threadless was beyond the visibility you could get on your own.
Yeah.
Like when you had something hit, it was, all over the internet, like everywhere. It was on every blog. It was on every geek site, right? And that's something you can't buy and you can't like do with a press release, And the thing is, there are a lot of those massive like movers like that watch Kickstarter and are looking for the next cool thing to promote and to put out there. By not having it on there, I think there's far less people looking on Amazon at self-published books and going, this is the next cool thing, because it's such a flooded market.
And so that's why I mentioned the Newsworthy event, because I don't think, unless you do it unless it's not focused on the Amazon pre-sale, it's focused on a big social media campaign, a suicide awareness campaign, and the action that you take happens to be this Amazon pre-sale. Otherwise, an Amazon pre-sale is not an event.
Yeah,
not in the same way.
So I have some thoughts. I don't know if this is something that can be done, or even if there may be rules against this. I'm not sure, but I'll just throw it out there because it's not something I've looked into, and there may be big holes in my theory here. But so I know you can put a book. So if you wanted to do the Amazon thing and or the Kickstarter, say you want to do Kickstarter and you're worried about not getting any Amazon sales for that book because you're ordering the artist copies or the author copies. I wonder, I know there's a way to put a listing on Amazon and not have it searchable. Now, I don't know if that can be changed. So let's say if you could put it up on Amazon and make it not searchable, and set the price with no profit. I mean, Amazon would take their profit, so you wouldn't be able to get it as low as your author copy.
Yeah.
But if that same listing can then be changed, so if you run the Kickstarter, you order the books yourself, ship them to you, but you're paying whatever. You're not paying the author thing, but you're not making a profit because you've already made some profit from Kickstarter.
Got it.
You're getting those shipped to you. So those should count as sales. And then if you can, and again, you have to look into this, if you can, after you've shipped all those books, because Kickstarter people are probably not gonna be happy if the book's on Amazon before you ship it. So if it's private, you get those sales, you order them for yourself at whatever the regular prices that you've set. And then you ship those out to your Kickstarters. Those all add up as sales. And then if you go back in, make it live and up the price before you do that to whatever you need to make a profit from there on out. I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's against terms of service. I don't really see why. I don't know if that's something you can do. If you can make something, non-searchable, then searchable. And I'm pretty sure you can change the price on your book.
Yeah.
Scott, do you know if you could give out coupons to people that would go to an Amazon sale?
That's
because that would be kind of interesting, as to list it for pre-sale as a SKU, and the pre-sale would happen after, it would go live, or it would ship after the Kickstarter date. But Kickstarter, you're actually getting as your reward a coupon that zeroes out the price for Amazon, and then whatever rewards that come after that could be shipped from Josh directly.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into any of that. You would think there'd be some sort of. I mean, every other thing has the ability to make coupons, but
yeah. Let me ask you this, Josh. Why are you not talking about getting an agent, going the traditional publishing route, approaching, Penguin and Boom and DC and Marvel and Image, or getting outside of that and going like traditional book publishers that are trying to break into things? Because I mean, you could get into Barnes and Noble and Amazon and stuff like that and not self-publish.
Can I jump in on this real quick, Josh?
I have a few things to kind of say about that. So like on the agent front, I had an agent very briefly for my book, who was an agent for some like pretty reputable cartoonists.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, like, okay, so the niche that I'm aiming to publish in is very finite.
Right.
The other issue is, like, the industry has shifted a lot since, like, like years ago. So there's been a couple shifts. Like initially, the idea of even having a graphic novel in a bookstore was absurd. And then there was this massive graphic novel surge, which right now is mostly in kid lit. But at the time, it was like more in adult literature, not adult like porn, but like adult, like, adult themed literature. And that surge, like when that boom happened, suddenly cartoonists were having an agent up. Like, so you needed a literary agent because you actually had like publishers like Knopf and like these giant like mega publishers with a massive distribution arm that makes Diamond look like a joke. Who are not approachable. Like there is literally a gatekeeper. Like if you're not represented, they're not going to look at your work.
Right.
And so that's a route. But the weird thing is, this is the like kind of neat thing and the frustrating thing about comics is such a weird industry, and sales are fairly low for most indie comics. Like I was shocked the more I got into the industry, like meeting publishers. Like I've actually had a lot of conversations with the guys who run Top Shelf and heard numbers of what the sales are, and you would think they're a lot higher than they are.
Right.
And what's weird is my first self-published book matched the sales numbers of like most books that Fantagraphics put out, most books that Top Shelf puts out. Like the indie publishers are not moving a ton of books. The books that are moving are like cartoonists who established themselves like right before that boom.
Yeah.
And then the other cartoonists that are moving books are cartoonists that had a following and then were approached by the publishers. And so this is the weird, like the side hatch into the comics industry is, and it's kind of the evil secret that I found. And I don't know if this is the case, but this is my theory on it, is that publishers at this point, when it comes to graphic novels, because it's a high risk publication, especially if it's not kidlit, like if it's kidlit, get a rep, like, get a representation and start pitching to like First Second, to Knopf, to Penguin, to like all these giant publishers. But
which is harder than you're making it seem, by the way. But yeah, but
it is hard. And like the agent that I had briefly was very hard to get a hold of, and I was very fortunate to have them while I did. The catch and what it even came down to from that agent is basically like you need to have a presence at conventions and you need to be moving books. That's what the publishers are looking at. Like when you see like the bigger book deals that have happened with cartoonists, especially indie cartoonists, it's indie cartoonists who are pulling weight before the publisher approached them. Usually publishers aren't putting out complete unknowns that are like sweeping it with book sales in comics. A lot of the cartoonists have been, they put it out through an indie or they put it out themselves and then it sold well and then a giant publisher came and scooped them up. So my theory on it is I would need to actually move enough books and actually move books at conventions. And weirdly enough, like if you do like portfolio submissions or like story submissions to a publisher, that kind of speaks well. What speaks a lot better is at an after party talking to a publisher who just saw you move 2,000 books at a convention.
Right.
Because like, regardless, if you're going to publish books, and this is another dark side of publishing, it doesn't work that way for everyone. Like we had Eric Fan on here of the Fan Brothers, and they were in a fortunate situation where they had a following for their art. And they had a publisher who just like was all in, and a lit agent who was all in, and a mass promotion wing behind what they were doing. And so it's a little different for their scenario. But most people I know who've done kids' books, you're selling the books. Like the publisher's putting out the book, but you still have to do conventions. You still have to do all the legwork and the promotions. And often most kids book artists at like kids book conventions that I've been to, and SCBWI, they have these big meetups. A lot of this I was exposed through with my wife, who's a member, and she's done multiple kids books. You meet these authors and they're having to buy their own books from the publisher at a discount to sell at conventions, and then they're moving books, and they're hustling, and they're booking their own interviews and stuff like that, and they have literary agents, right? So it's a long-winded way of me saying, like, I think the most effective strategy is to be your own agent. I would totally advise against that tactic if I were doing young adult books.
Yeah.
Because there's a mass market for that.
Right.
But for the kind of thing I'm doing, I actually think that regardless, I would be having to buy copies. I would be having to go to conventions and basically be pushing that book. And so it's one of those things of like, I really just don't have enough clout in that industry to pull a publisher to me. And honestly, I could, delay the book by 2 years by getting an agent. But it's like most of the comic companies that I've submitted it to love it and are like, but we don't have a market for it. You should put it out yourself.
So I have
the feedback I've gotten.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, but I want to hear Scott's thoughts. What are you thinking, Scott?
Well, Josh kind of touched on pretty much most of what I was going to say, but I was just going to say that you don't, just because he doesn't go that route right now doesn't mean it's out of the question. Once if he starts selling those books and he's building an audience, he can attract those publishers, and he'll be in a better position, and then he can decide whether that's worth it or not. I mean, it could be, you could, I don't know, I don't remember the exact story about the guy that wrote The Martian, but I know he self-published it. I don't know if eventually they came after and he went with the publisher, or if he just kept self-publishing. But, of course, that's sort of an outlier, obviously. But
right, and even 3 to 5 years ago, that was way different. Right. Self-publishing was looked at as negative. Well,
it's weird though, because comics are like this weird, different industry in the sense of like in kids' books, it's always, even still to this day, it's starting to change, but it's still like if you say I self-published, like a lot of the time a publisher will close the door on you. It's like a sign. It's just like this weird hang up. And with Kickstarter, actually, that started to change because there have been some really amazing kids books that have sold like significant numbers that have made publishers have to be like, oh, well, maybe it's not such a bad thing. In literature, it's always been bad, but in comics, I think it has to do with comic books being such a, like, especially the kind I'm doing. It's always been an outsider art, and it's kind of lowbrow, and because of that, it's got like a punk rock ethic in the sense of like a lot of publishers in comics, especially indie publishers, like they want you to earn your stripes. It's almost like hip hop or punk rock in that sense. Even the mainstream companies like Marvel, DC, like the biggest authors and artists in there, like self-published for years and worked for like indie publishers for years before kind of even getting Marvel to kind of be interested. So comics are like this weird world of publishing where they don't follow the rules of regular publishing. You don't kind of like lose points by self-publishing. You actually earn points. Like that's kind of the way in, and that's kind of the weird thing with comics, but it makes sense. I mean, you think about it, Mouse, right? Mouse was self-published. It was Raw, and Art Spiegelman and his wife published Raw at a loss for like close to 10 years. And all of the artists in Raw, including Chris Ware, one of my favorite artists, right? He was working for like a pittance, like to do these little bits for Raw. And yet like these are the guys that Pantheon's putting out now,
Yeah. So
it's a weird industry.
It is. And you're bringing up interesting things, because I tried for a very short period of time to get an agent, because I have a straight up children's book, right? And so, and I was I don't want to name drop, but I had a phone call with somebody who was bigger, right? And he was interested and eventually turned it down, but took the time to talk to me for 90 minutes on the phone. And he was saying some really interesting things about that. And I asked him, like, do you think self-publishing this would hurt me in the industry? And he said no, but it'd probably end any chances of the book getting published, but it wouldn't hurt you as an author illustrator.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting, but he also felt like for a number of reasons that my book was kind of unpublishable. And so I don't know, and I'm not sure if that was just his opinion or what, but it is definitely kind of an interesting thing. One of my questions I had is, your audience actually as niche as you think it is? Because
no, I don't think the audience itself is niche. I think they're dispersed.
yes,
and I actually think that they're niche for a publishing industry that makes the majority of its money publishing science fiction and capes and tights books. And I think that to get that industry to be less myopic, and this is like, it's not me who's saying this too. Like, you can read multiple interviews with Daniel Klaus. He's one of the most known indie cartoonists who doesn't do like capes and tights and sci-fi fantasy or kidlit. And it's been like a struggle for him even now to this day. And like, it's funny because when Klaus started delving into doing movies, he actually recently, because of the boom of superhero films, was like saying that he felt less anger towards that genre because he realized, like, once it got to film, he's like, that's just what people want. And so it's like he couldn't feel anger towards it. But my point is, it's hard to get people in the comics industry, even if you look online at like comic companies that call themselves alternative comics. And I'm not knocking any publishers, because I think it's a business and you have to put out stuff that's going to sell and that is going to sell and the market. But if you look at any alternative or indie comic publishers, how often are those books like slice of life? Like in all reality, how often are they slice of life or lit books? And how often are they apocalyptic or zombie themed or fantasy themed? And I'm not knocking fantasy. I'm just saying that's the niche that I think they know will sell. And it's funny, even within that niche, people who do fantasy get frustrated because they're not doing superhero books, right? And so they're like, can't stand superhero books. I want a publisher who'll think outside of the box and publish fantasy. It niches down. So in the comics industry, I'm dealing with a niche. But I don't think it's like that niche. I think about like Netflix, right? Like, just had Marriage Story, right? And it's up for an Oscar, and it had like crazy amounts of views, and that's like a slice of life drama.
yeah.
So there's a market out there for slice of life, and I'm not pretending like what I did is like, maybe my writing could improve and stuff like that. But my point is, like, for the genre I'm writing in, I know there's an audience. It's just finding that audience, and I kind of think I'm going to do a better job at that than a lot of indie publishers who really don't know how to market like a slice of life book unless it's already winning Eisners. It's like it's kind of weird. And I even think about like Craig Thompson's a really good example. Like Goodbye Chunky Rice was self-published, and then that got picked up.
Right.
So, it's like the side hatch route, I think, is the only route with comics.
Okay.
From what I see at this point, for what I can do possibly.
Yeah.
That's a good
Question from Kayla, and maybe Scott, since you have the most experience in both of these areas, maybe you could weigh in, but I think I'm a bit behind on information. Quick question. What is the difference between a pre-order and a Kickstarter? It sounds like they are both someone pre-ordering the book. I'm genuinely curious. Not specifically an Amazon pre-order, because I know that's what you guys are discussing, just a pre-order in general. So pre-order of anything versus a Kickstarter. So you've run several Kickstarters. Why do you do Kickstarters and not just a pre-order on your Squarespace site?
Well, I mean, Kickstarter has, I mean, they have an audience there now. Yeah. I've never really had them push anything of mine. Most of the traffic, like Josh said, was brought there by me. But there's always, certain people. I know there's people on there that I've never heard of or whatever that did back it. So there's that. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's. I think that's.
I just the.
That is a good answer.
There's a term I'm searching for. It's basically already built for you. You don't have to create it yourself.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's some significant things about it that I think are important. So I haven't run a Kickstarter. I probably will this year because I'm leaning towards that. For some reason, that feels right for my book more than what Josh is talking about. But
I kind of feel like with your book, like the kind of book it's going to be, it needs to be a Kickstarter. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, I don't think it's going to be like a trade.
Yeah, it's a 40-page one and done thing, Yeah. But real quick, so with the Kickstarter, you have an interesting opportunity to upsell in this short period. And so I've backed over 100 Kickstarter projects. Some of them I'm like, I like this guy, I'm kind of broke right now. Here's a couple bucks. Some of them I've paid significantly more than that, right? Mm-hmm. And I've enjoyed doing it. But what I've noticed is if I go in and somebody's selling a book for $20, I'm like, oh, this looks fascinating. I have some key indicators of whether that is going to be successfully fulfilled or not. And I've got a pretty good success rate. And one of my rules is if you've got a couple pages done, unless you are a established finisher, I don't even touch it. I'll buy it after the fact. Yeah. Right. But anyway, in the process of that, I'll get in early, right? Because there's usually like an early bird tier where you save $5 or something. I'll get in early. I'll get the early bird tier. And then from there, I just watch this thing happen. I'm as a consumer kind of caught up in the spectacle of it, and I see it grow. Yeah. I see it approach this goal. I'm invested. In my mind, that $20 is already sunk cost. And so when they come out and they say, hey, we just need another little push, and I've opened up this tier for $5, you can get bookmarks, and I'm going to put it in a slip cover, and we're going to upgrade it to a cloth bound if I can hit this level, so tell your friends or whatever. Sometimes I'm like, I'll spend an extra $5, whereas maybe that 25 was too much.
Yeah.
Mentally, I have some mental blocks where I don't like spending more than a certain amount of money for certain things. But if it's tiered, it's kind of rolled out. It's different. Whereas a pre-order, it's like, do you want this thing at this price? And you're like, yes. And then you wait. And there's nothing else. There's no gamification. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of involvement. I feel like I'm supporting the creator, but I don't feel that intimate connection with the creator where I'm getting emails from them. I'm getting notifications from them. I'm getting like, hey, thanks. This is really nerve-wracking for me, but you guys are amazing. These little updates throughout. And so I believe it feels like a stronger connection.
You've touched on something so important that's hitting home for me as like strengths. Like, so to me, I think pre-order is almost out of the question.
Okay.
Because I think if I'm going to drive sales and my purpose is to drive sales direct, I need to drive direct sales and not pussyfoot around it. Just literally just get them right there.
So you're saying if you choose to do a pre-order, you might as well just not do a pre-order and just do a Kickstarter.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, if I choose to just direct people directly to Amazon rather than direct them to a pre-order, just direct them to the book.
Right.
Like, because I'm not like pre-orders for like Chris Ware, the legend, is putting out a book. Let's put 10,000 copies on pre-order. It's not for this unheard of that just drove you to the site and now you have to wait extra long time. Now,
I don't know. What if a very popular writer at the Atlantic picks up the story and says this is going to be a big deal?
Oh, no, agreed. But my point is that could also happen with the direct sale, right?
Sure.
The catch is what you're touching on about Kickstarter is very good though, because there's an incentive when you've kicked in to a Kickstarter to spread the word about it, because you're now invested and there's a sense of having a vested interest in this thing succeeding. So if you see the thing not getting there, you have more incentive to go, you guys have to check this out, because there's a clock. And if it doesn't hit that, then this thing that you thought was cool that you've invested in may not happen. So there's that sense of urgency, not only to drive the sale, but to drive the community promotion. Whereas if it's just a direct sale, right, where I'm like, hey, get my book, there's no incentive after you've gotten that book to kind of spread the word and be like, you have to get this book because unless there's something attached. So if I go that route, I'm going to have to come up with incentives to drive what Kickstarter naturally drives on its own. And that's kind of an interesting conundrum. I'm sorry, it just came to my head while you were talking about it, because I was realizing that's one of the biggest strengths of Kickstarter is you have the timeline, so there's a sense of urgency.
Right.
But there's also that community sense of responsibility for getting the product out that you don't necessarily have. Maybe with a pre-order, if the pre-order is like driven by, we have to hit 100 pre-orders before this thing goes to print or something like that. Although that's less, and like you were saying, there's less upselling involved. There's less kind of cool things for the people contributing to that pre-order, because you click pre-order and then you're going to wait. Yeah. And maybe tell other people, hey, click pre-order. But with the Kickstarter thing, it's like, oh, well, if we get like 10 more people, I get all this cool extra stuff. Come on, guys, open it up. So that is kind of, wow. So now I'm not sure if I have a solid idea of where to go.
See, because that's my challenge. Now, let me ask you this question, Josh, because I'm really curious on why you said this.
Yeah.
Why do you think my book should be on a Kickstarter and not just sell it on Amazon?
So there's actually a really viable reason for that. So like with a graphic novel like mine, I don't feel like it's out of place with like the vision for the project for it to be a trade paperback printed on a normal paper stock at 8.5 by 11. It's a standard size. It's not standard size comic book. It's a big comic, but from what I've seen from KDP, the quality's good. However, kids' books, KDP, not so strong. So that's kind of the catch, is like, I think the genre that you're printing in, and then depending on the vision you have for it, I'm not saying it would be bad. KDP is an option, but it just seems like a less clear option. Like 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought of KDP or any print-on-demand site, but the quality that they're able to get on their books is almost indistinguishable from trades you actually get.
Right. And I mean, this is just something that I printed at the local print shop. You know what I mean? So is what you're saying that if it was kind of perfect bound paperback, that like a kid would just destroy it? I mean, well, is your point that it needs to be like a hardback?
I feel like with your book, it might be good as a hardback. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would think on like French paper or something.
Yeah.
But
with KDP, you only have one option, the paper, and it isn't the thickest paper. So I kind of agree with Josh that I don't know if it works. It would work well for like a children's book. Like, I mean, you could go like KDP is even a little different. I mean, it's different than even like other, like the comic book print on demand, like a Comics Wellspring or Kablam, where usually the paper that they use is a little thicker.
Yeah.
KDP is, I mean, it's designed. I mean, they're probably not giving much thought to graphic novels and stuff like that when they design it mostly for like novels and things like that. So
and so it's like for like a book that's going to be a thick book that's, you know, relatively like the page weight doesn't have to be super thick.
Right.
It works great. But if I were doing a floppy, I don't think I'd do it with KDP. Like if I were doing just a you know, but once again, I'm not knocking it because for all I know, it might work great. I just like, if I were doing a kid's book, I might do it through KDP, but it just depends. Like I definitely would test it and see, you know.
Let me see, I got a couple examples here. Hold on.
And while
conversation though, I hope I haven't dominated too much of it.
I'm
in a conundrum of it.
Yeah, and I'm super curious because I'm in a very similar spot. I think my doubts and fears are driving me more than good decisions, and that's why I'm super hesitant to kind of make any decisions at this point. But if you're just listening, look at the screen right now, because I'm just going to flip through a couple pages of Josh's book so you get kind of an idea of what we're talking about here. So anyway, as I'm flipping through, like this is a book where it feels like an indie comic, right? It belongs on those shelves, but I also really could see this, and I know that there's still some barriers to entry for this, but I could really see this, you know, in a bookstore, in a Barnes and Noble. I could see it, you know, at kind of independently owned bookstores. You know, I mean, for that matter, you know, I mean, Walmart could pick it up. You know, I mean, so that's the type of thing that I think is really possible with this type of thing. It's a fascinating book. I think it's a fascinating book, and it's a really interesting story with everything that's going on, and it hits the zeitgeist really well. And so I think you've got the challenge that we're talking about is the book good, or people going to like it? I don't think that's that challenge for me. And I'll qualify this because I know you guys are going to argue with me, but that is the challenge on my book. But the challenge for your book, Josh, seems to be how do you initially get it out there? Like, what's the push initially? And so I actually have a third option that we haven't talked about that I think would be a very viable option. If you could put together a few $100, I think you could do a really interesting social media paid ads campaign that could drive some significant organic traffic after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And if you played your cards right, you could make, you know, $200 to $500 go pretty far on several platforms. And you can segment your audience down so well nowadays. I mean, Cambridge Analytica abused that and ruined it for everybody. And so it's not as segmented as it used to be, but if you can find influencers who talk about that topic, then you can key in on their audience. If you can find books that you feel like, because I mean, I was just talking about this today in class. In my YouTube channel, in the description of the YouTube channel, I mention the War of Art. And I specifically do that because the type of things that you will find on my social media will align with the values of the people who read that book. And so
Agreed.
if you are searching YouTube for The War of Art and you come across my channel, I think that you would be interested in that type of content. The same thing for you. If there is a book out there that is talking about these topics that is already doing well, you could run a paid ads campaign and do a pay-per-click, pay-per-impression situation where you're doing, a really well-designed pre-roll video on YouTube where people are talking about suicide prevention or mental health or that type of thing, and you get that 15-second pitch before they watch that video, or a promoted post on Instagram that drives traffic directly to a website. All of those things, if segmented correctly, could drive a significant amount of traffic. And if it costs you 50 cents per sale, if you can convert at a buck or two and your margin is higher than that, that's worth it every time, right?
Exactly. So now you're keying into one of the strengths of the idea of, that could roll into a Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
But one of my headphones are about to die, by the way. But what that also rolls into is a real support for the idea of just directly putting it out so that I can then start hitting the marketing as a product and have that return when I get that market conversion, rather than a return that then goes to Kickstarter, that then goes to this and then goes to that. Literally just get direct returns that go directly to the book. Similarly, if I have the book, it's easier for me to get press copies out to the press to generate press stuff, which I've totally seen in my own experience. And I know the game's a little different now, but I've seen that in my own experience where I've gotten local papers to write about my book, and then suddenly in that area, the stores order it,
Right.
And so I know that's a game I'm going to have to play, and it's very frustrating. And I'm sure a lot of it's going to be just literally, it'll probably start by me hitting up friends, what comic podcast do you know? All of the stuff everyone has to do during a Kickstarter campaign, just taking out the Kickstarter and just putting the product right there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because to me, that would be a much more noteworthy experiment if I'm investing money into advertising and the product's already there, rather than advertising to advertise.
I have a crazy idea.
Yeah.
What if you did, instead of selling the book, you gave the book away at the first person's $25 tier on your Patreon, and then after that month, they could drop off or drop down to a $1 or $2 thing, or if they want to stay at $25 a month, they could. Would that be something that you'd be interested in doing?
So tie it to a Patreon to get
yeah. So if I was doing it, right, here's mine, right? I could say, okay, I'm doing a Patreon. Anybody who signs up in their first month on a $20 tier, I will ship you this book. And you can adjust your pledge after the fact, but the likelihood of somebody sticking around after they do that is higher, and they're getting a book. And so they could come in and they could say, I'm just going to do it for the book, and then bail, and hey, you sold a book, right? Or they could come in and they say, I'm going to do it for the book, and I'm going to stick around to like this guy's content. I'll give them a couple bucks a month. And so they drop their tier down from 20 to 2. And then after you've sold a book, but you also have gained a patron.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of thinking that could also go in tandem with a book that exists on Amazon. So to give an example, when I put it on Amazon, I can still get author copies too.
Right.
And so that doesn't change the self-promotion push that I can do on a local level, setting up readings, doing all of the typical stuff that you do for a self-published book, where I'll go to the local bookstores, I'll hit LA. I have this whole crazy idea of self-promoting comics, in a grassroots way, where I would hit every weekend, I would take stacks of books to different local bookstores in person, distributing them until I've basically made my way all the way to Northern California. like, and just doing that every weekend until I've run out of stores in an area, and then move on to the next, like, you know, almost like I'm selling totally like a drug dealer pushes drugs. And similarly, like, I could gauge it with the Patreon. I could connect it with that. I could connect it with social media followers. I could connect it with, you know, like with fans that are, you know, direct fans of mine. I can offer, like, I'll do signed copies and that kind of thing. I can still sell original pages, you know, and possibly tie that in with the Patreon, because I think that might be kind of appealing for people.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like that'd have to be like $100 a year, or possibly more. Like,
but I mean, that's another that I would do more, but that's another thing. That's another thing that's a really interesting moneymaker of this book is, I mean, I have art on my walls that I have sold books off of. You know, like, I will show not my books, but because I've collected this art.
yeah,
When people come to my studio or see, you know, behind me, I've had people comment and say, "Hey, what is that page behind you?"
yeah,
I say, "Oh, that's from one of my favorite illustrators, blah, 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 blah." And then they go buy that book, right? And so you could actually get the profit off of selling the original page, which I know you're hesitant to do, and I understand that, but the profit off of selling the original page, and then also that becomes an installation in someone's home. And it's a talking piece. It's a conversation starter that leads towards more people knowing about your book.
yeah. I mean, I could even do, I know it's weird, this is spitballing, but it's like, I could even do sales incentives where I'm like, you know, if you get 30 people to buy my book, I'll give you page 1.
Yeah.
You know, like 30 closed book sales, page 1's yours.
Yeah. Now, that's an interesting thing, because you're talking about affiliate.
Yeah.
In that situation, is that something that you can track?
I'm guessing if I were to say something like, I would have to look at, I mean, that's one of those things, I'd have to look at the logistics of it, right? Like, is there a way that when people buy something, they could put in a code that would let me know that that sale was driven, you know?
Yeah.
I find it fascinating, and like, I want to dip into the pool of trying all sorts of different marketing techniques, but I'm also really excited by examples like Jeff Smith, you know, where like him and his wife created cartoon books and just hustled it, and, you know, became a book that got bought 3 times.
Right.
You know, it initially got bought just for the publishing rights by Image, and then it got bought by Scholastic, and now it's been bought by Netflix, right? For like an animated
series. I forgot about that. I gotta see that.
Yeah, and I know that when
is it out?
Bone was bought by Image, I know the numbers thrown around were somewhere in the millions.
Mm-hmm.
What they were generating from cartoon books was pretty public knowledge, and at that point they were pulling in a couple million. And so basically Image, who never pay I don't mean this in a negative, it's just irregular for them to pay anyone free. Usually their deal's like, oh, you get a cut and you keep the rights.
Yeah, that's just not their business model.
Yeah, but they made an exception with Bone and made a pretty big offer. And then, you know, that if Image had that offer, what Scholastic paid must have been higher. And so you start just doing the math of like something that started, and keep in mind that was in the sweet spot of self-publishing where, you know, you had Love and Rockets was doing poor sales of 40,000 copies a month. So, you know, it's a different time, because now if you have an indie book doing 40,000 a year, that's a strong book.
But I always say this: historical data is interesting, but it doesn't tell you what's going to happen. And I will continue to say this over and over again. My book is about people should be nice to each other, which is kind of, it's something I feel strongly about, but it's kind of milquetoast. Your book is literally hitting the zeitgeist right square dead in between the eyes right now. And so,
which is where I want to, that's the part of me that wants to just bypass the Kickstarter, get it set up, bypass the pull quotes and stuff, and then strategize with you guys, like ways to market this thing and get it out there and communicate online, like what works and what doesn't. Be really transparent about it, being like, hey, I have this book, I want to market it. Here's different ways I'm approaching it.
I think a couple
and successes,
Yeah, I think a couple of things right off the top of my head, but real quick. Animate for the Sell of It has said, have you talked to other artists who have done this successfully? Steve Silver or the Baby Bad A comics. You guys have had this conversation over and over and over again on the Artcasters.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think reaching out to people, would be super helpful.
Agreed.
I think you need a really good video book trailer.
Yeah.
And use that as a pre-roll ad. On YouTube and on IGTV as a promoted Instagram post and on Facebook and on Twitter and on everywhere else. And you're literally just telling the story of this book, because the story of this book is interesting, because if I can look you in the eyes and see that this means something to you, that's gonna hit home while I'm seeing incredible art. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that you need to do. And then in addition to that, personally, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters whether you go Kickstarter or direct sales to Amazon, because they both have pretty good positives, and it really just depends on. It's kind of sixes, I think, with what you're dealing with. But if I were you, I would lean towards not Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm, because the other thing is I've invested 5 years, and I'm also at the point of I don't need to wait for a Kickstarter. And the other thing is, a lot of people, when they're funding a Kickstarter, and I'm not knocking Kickstarter, but a lot of people are finding the funding to do the print run, or they're, finding the funding to complete the book. And in this scenario, it's I have the book, it's completed, it's going to be beautiful. And so, and I'm going to spend time, doing proof copies and stuff like that, and making sure it's not horse crap, because that'll be the instant no, as if I get proofs and the quality is terrible.
Right.
But if I have a good quality book, at that point I can strategize and still be selling books. I can strategize, I can build a new video and still be selling books. I can be building a new video and then booking a local reading and going to different comic shops to promote it, and starting to book comic conventions and starting to build that up. And there's a part of me that just wants to dive in. And it's partially because I've been there. I've actually put out books before, and I don't really want to go the Diamond route. Diamond's good. I've been in Diamond, and that's super awesome. But once again, I kind of want to cut the middleman out of the scenario, because I'm if I do get a book thing with this, I would like it to be a huge publisher.
Yeah.
Where, Diamond, because I don't think Diamond is going to get me to the customer that I need to get to.
Right.
And that's not to say, like I said, I'm always open to publishers and stuff, but I feel like in the interim, I could actually be making action on this thing and failing at it too, which I think is important. So I can't know if a video push is going to work, and I can't metric or measure that until it's actually happening.
Right. But the nice thing about it is you can do A/B split testing and really see whether or not, and you can dial it in. I can put you in touch with some people that would, they're used to bigger budgets, but they would be phenomenal at this. But that could be really a really interesting thing. And the nice thing about it is you're not guessing. You literally see the metrics, and you're like, I'm going to spend $50 as just a test.
Yeah.
And exactly what happened. How long people watched it. How many people skipped it. Whether there was a conversion, whether there was a click through and they bounced from the page. You can literally zero in like you never have been able to on the problems in your customer flow.
Yeah.
With that, and so that could be really powerful. Yeah, everything that you're saying is making me super hesitant to do this for myself. I hate all the things that you're saying. I hate getting out there. I want to just sit in my studio and make stuff.
Me too.
I really would like but what I'm saying is that you sound excited to do this, and I've done it once and I hated it so much. And so I've got to figure out a way for myself to get past all the mental barriers and blocks that are keeping me from doing this, because my book has been done for a year. And I printed 10 copies of it, and they're sitting here in my desk.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like if I decide to go the route of like being more organic about it, like instead of going out and seeking out pull quotes and having more delay and then trying to get the right quotes to like sell the book and all of that, if I actually just go ahead and design the book back, because I'm pretty, the more I've thought about it, I'm really happy with the initial cover of this book. I think that is the book cover. And so at this point I'd have to design a spine, a back, and another interior page. Mm-hmm. And then format the interiors, and I have a book done. And through this, if this is at all successful, I have another graphic novel that's completely finished, that's full color, that I could try to see if I could take the same tactic with, that I could literally put out a month from now if I wanted to. Right. So if there's momentum, I have something I could literally just drop to return on that momentum. And so I feel like the part of me that I feel like all of the reasons I won't do it is delay and fear. And I feel you on it, because I feel fear even talking about it. Like I'm excited, but I'm also filled with dread of like that first post, having nobody buy it. Or that first big push, like contacting all my friends and then having, like all the fears that go through people's heads where you're like, well, what do I do if I ask all my friends to share it and like it's a pin drop in a forest, Do
you know what I'm doing right now that I did a year ago? I literally have people asking to see my animated short. I want to see this. Where can I see this?
Yeah. I
get that question, and I'm not trying to brag, but I get that question multiple times a week.
That's good.
And right now, because of the festivals, and Jim and I have on the Indiemation podcast, holding films hostage.
I watched it. It was great.
That's kind of what that's about. But last year, I had people that are like, "Oh, I really want to read your story. Where can I get it?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't put it out yet." And then I stopped talking about it, and so people stopped asking me about it. But I actually have people that would spend money. I don't know if there's 10 of them or 100, but I have people that would spend money that I'm kind of like, I kind of just want to make my next project, and I just ignore them, and I go, it's like the worst thing that you could do. I don't know what my problem is.
Yeah, I understand, because I have the same thing, and yet like I've actually like. With Numb, and this was years ago, but I sold the first printing. Like I did a first printing of 2,000 copies, which was a total overprint for an indie comic. And I sold it, and then stupidly did a second printing because I didn't know indie comics numbers at the time. So I was like, so I have a bunch of boxes of that in my garage. And that's another thing I need to do, right? Is like put those up on Amazon so people can buy that comic.
Right.
So there's some moves I need to make, but I'm finally kind of at this point where I'm like not that far from making them, being able to play them, and I feel like I'm kind of getting to that point of the precipice where I'm going to need to jump in, and I think figure it out as I go, because I don't think this is going to be something that I can like market research my way into. I think it's something I need to put out there and then market research as it's out there, so that every tactic I use is leading back to a potential sale. Mm-hmm. And also so that I have those copies so I can start, and this is part of my game plan, is like every weekend take at least like 3 to 5 copies and send them somewhere, like wherever it is, like 3 to 5 press copies, to a blogger, to a podcast, to whatever. Because this is not a book. Like, I might even email PDFs and stuff, but this isn't a PDF book. It's not a digital book. It's a book that is I've seen it at scale, and it looks really good in print.
Right.
It's made for print. It's black and white. Black and white's better in print.
So would you be opposed to a Comixology situation?
No, I'll probably put it up on like through KDP. I'll probably put it on Kindle and also KDP, the book publishing, and why not? Yeah, I'll probably make a digital comic and put it up on Comixology. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
If people like reading it that way, I'm not going to judge them, but I would tell them it's a print book.
Yeah, right.
So if people like it not in print, great. I mean, right now I currently have it, online for people to read.
Yeah,
I
right.
feel like this is definitely the kind of book that's going to gain more readers. It's also like a sit in your room alone book. It's not like a social book,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that all sound absurd, or do you guys see the logic? Does it seem stupid?
No, I think it makes sense to me. I mean, Scott, you're the only one that's
You
run a
successfully
Kickstarter.
ran a Kickstarter, Scott. So, like, do you think I'm copping out and trying to avoid a Kickstarter?
No, I mean, and there are some drawbacks to Kickstarter. Kind of, I dealt with some stuff in the last one I ran because with the whole Facebook thing and crashing the day I launched it and all that kind of stuff. So there are drawbacks. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways you can go. I just don't know. It's hard for me to say what's right for you.
Yeah. And that's good advice too. Like, even part of how I sold those copies of Numb, a friend of mine, Jeff Mason, used to run this comic publisher called Alternative Comics, and he I didn't know him at the time. I just reached out to him and was like, hey, I just got this grant and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, because I had gotten funded, but like it's kind of like a very similar situation where I am now, where it's like, it's different when it's reality,
Yeah.
And when it gets closer to reality, you start realizing like how out of your depth you are. And so I just reached out to him and was like, what do I do? And he helped me learn how to do press releases, how to send out to press, gave me his contact list, which was super helpful. If I could, I will probably try to reach out to publishers, but I doubt any publisher is going to share their contact list like that. And helped me kind of get into the game a little bit. So I have a rough idea of the business. Keep in mind that was like, 2006 or 2005. So
Yeah.
a long time ago. And the industry shifted a lot. But the neat thing is I still know for a fact that like press releases haven't changed too much. In the sense of like, what you want to do is give a journalist a day off. So you need to write a compelling article about yourself, and you need to do it in a persuasive way that's an article you want to read. So if you want to be compared to certain artists, you need to put that in your press release, that your artwork is similar to these artists. And what's amazing is, if you want your narrative to be that your book is deep and in this certain area, like whatever you want people to write about your book, you put in the press release, and you need to put it in a compelling way that it can literally be an article that they can just cut and paste, and it's a day off for that journalist. And that works really well for press releases. And I know for a fact, like, it works because I put in my press release, I compared myself to certain artists, and like literally got newspaper articles saying his art's like this artist, and it didn't quote me. They just were lazy and didn't want to do the research, and so they just copied who I compared myself to, which is great because then you have a pull quote saying your art is like this artist you really admire. And so you kind of start creating your own narrative. Corey's like in communications, so he will be one of my biggest resources probably during this whole thing. I'll probably even have you proofread my press release and stuff. My sister was a senior editor of an entertainment section of a newspaper. So that's step 2 after this conversation. Like once I've figured out the path, before I do that back cover, I'm going to be printing out my entire book and then bugging my sister to review it and write a really good summary of what the book's about. Because that's really hard to do that back copy.
Yeah.
And that back copy is like the start of a press release, you know? So like that's kind of what I'm thinking, you know? It also doesn't hurt if your press release looks nice. You want it to be something that you're sending that people don't want to throw away. Like they feel like they're getting a cool free book, right? And a cool free poster or something.
Yeah. So. Animating for the Celibate had a suggestion about Indiegogo. Have you thought about Indiegogo? So he says there's better returns.
Indiegogo is hard to talk about. I don't know if people with the kind of book I'm doing would do well on Indiegogo.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends because there's some specific audiences within the comics niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, that are there's some expectations there. And so it'd be kind of interesting to do what you're doing, which is a little bit more slice of life and a little less 90s comics.
And I think the weird thing is, you know, I don't know if Indiegogo's for this book, but I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to anything. I'm just kind of trying to think of what would have the result of what I'm hoping for. And like initially what I'm going for is I want this book finished and printed. Like I really do.
Right.
I want a book that I can show and hustle and promote. And I want most of those efforts to be going to the book because I feel like if I can get the book in people's hands, there's not a lot of convincing past that.
Right.
And so that's the tough part but I like the idea. I like a lot of ideas. I do like the idea of some kind of affiliate thing too.
Yeah.
But like, once again, it's less fun to spitball that stuff when I can't make an action about it. Like right now it's all hypothetical. Right. And I feel like if I actually get it out there, that's a lot more incentive to promote it.
One of the things that I've considered, and I've approached a couple people about this, Mike Emirates, if you're watching this, I still want to hire you to do this for me. I would rather say find somebody who, with an upfront fee plus a cut of the book, just takes this from me so I don't have to do it anymore, because that would be amazing. And here's something that I'm thinking about as well. And this is probably going into, because we're approaching 2 hours, but probably going into another episode. But this is something that I will be talking about with Jim Lujan on the Indimation conversation. Is I have a short. By the end of this year, I will have either a shorter feature or a longer short. It's going to be upwards in the 30 to 60 minute range. Once I do that, what are the avenues for that? Because I'm actually considering trying to figure out a way to get streaming services on board with shorts. Yeah. I mean, I want to approach Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and these guys and say, you need your own version of liquid television where you just have indie animation, put out an episode a week that has just, 15 shorts in it or something, and just stream it or whatever, because there's no avenue for that I can see that really you do the circuit. And from everything I can tell, the idea of doing shorts for festivals is to break into Hollywood. Yeah. I have zero interest in breaking into Hollywood. Yeah. But I have a lot of interest in getting the stuff that I'm producing out there. And so.
Yeah. And it's sad because there used to be avenues like Jim, was in Spike and Mike's and Twisted Festival, which was like great because they would actually collect those and release them as like collected films, and so there was kind of like a viability to it,
Right.
where it could be its own thing. But there's not a lot of that going on, even with the festivals, where they're collecting them all in the same curated way. I don't know if that makes sense. And so you're right. Like, we're missing kind of that avenue for indie animation. The only thing I can think that's kind of similar is like Cartoon Network does have this strange tendency to pay indie animators to do very brief bits. But that's all pitching and stuff. And I think Jim would be the better person to talk to about that, because I think he's done pitches and stuff.
Right. And he's successfully been on television with his work. And I think he's got a show that's running now. But a lot of that stuff tends to be like, a Beautiful Corpse bumper transition from Rick and Morty into the commercials, or whatever, or as a trailer for the show itself or something. But what I'm talking about is what we're missing in today's media is we are missing Elvira. We're missing the local, B movie film, the horror film, where it's like in your market, you're up all night, is the one that I used to have, where I grew up. And it's basically like, let's show some shorts, let's show some cartoons, let's show some movies.
One local here called Dumpster Piece Theater, and there were puppets and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of along the lines of Scott's original vision for like the Cirqueworks Art Labs channel, where you were going to have like the kind of puppets and stuff and do that whole B movie thing. I don't know. It could also be something that, maybe if there's a hole, maybe that's something you could build with the YouTube channel. Yeah. And it's just not going to have the backing of like a Disney Plus or like a, Netflix without a.
And I will say this about Disney Plus is pushing shorts hard, but they're pushing Disney and Pixar shorts.
Yeah.
There's nothing else, but they've got, it's on every page that you're looking at. They're like, look at these shorts, watch these shorts. Here's a feature on these shorts. They're really trying to get shorts out there. So I wonder if they're going to do something, but also probably any animation that I ever do would not end up on a Disney channel.
Agreed.
Just because
you had it for 13 years and then they buy you out.
Yeah. And that's fine. They could, I'll take Disney money.
That was my little Matt Groening sadness.
Yeah, I know.
Because the one thing that's sad, and I'm stoked because I've been rewatching all the Simpsons among most Disney Plus subscribers, but one of the things that's sad about it is they used to poke so much fun at Disney that they got sued by Disney multiple times.
Right.
And then Disney bought them. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, man. Okay, so many things. So many things. We are now at 2 hours and 3 minutes.
Yeah, we got to
Oh, my God.
Thank you guys. Thanks for spitballing. I knew this was the right place to bring it. I just hope, like, if you guys think the idea of just doing direct is crazy, speak now or forever hold your peace, because that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Okay. Well, at least you found somewhere to lean towards, because it seemed like you were just getting a lot of information, and it was making it probably worse off than where you started. So
yeah,
I'm really good at just a deluge of information that makes the decision worse. That's my contribution to most conversations like this.
No, I love it because you did accurately point out some of the benefits of kickstarting something. And I think that hopefully this was helpful for people out there. If you guys end up in a scenario where you have a book or a finished product and you're at that like, oh crap point, this is one of the benefits of having like an art check is you bounce ideas off, and spitballing is a good percentage of success, at least in my own career, has been from just, hey, I got a wild idea, let me throw it at you, and having, valued input at it. So.
Hey, we've got a hater in the chats. That's fun. So hold on just a sec. We'll just block that guy. See you later, dude. The one thing I think you miss with just direct sales is the experience that I have had over and over and over again. And if I'm being honest, it sticks with you, where I find somebody that seems like they're starting out. I know you're not starting out, but that feeling of discovery of a creator. I buy art from that person. I follow them on Twitter. I have conversations with them. Like I have discovered people's work, and you get a little bit of that like in on the ground floor feeling where you're just not going to get that on a monolithic situation like Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Abe Books or whatever. But on a Patreon or a Kickstarter, it feels more intimate, and it feels more like I was involved in this person's success, which makes me want to engage with them more. I do think you're missing out on that. Otherwise, I think everything else makes more sense to just jump in and start doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's going to be interesting because either way, I think the downside of these things is it's almost like starting a political campaign where you have to start calling in favors from friends, and that's a nerve-wracking position to be in, where you're like, hey, can you put this out there, please? Like it's an awkward position to be in. But what's weird is I think most people who've successfully run those campaigns have weathered through it. So. And like you said, I think a lot of it stems from my hesitation on both sides, regardless of what I choose, is all fear. And to me, that's a really good sign of like, yeah, it's probably the right thing because I feel freaked out by it.
Yeah.
I agree. The streaming wars can be great for creators. It can be bad for some too, but, some controversy can sell stuff.
And there's a lot more options and a lot more production money than there has been in a long time. I mean, you look at the type of money that Amazon and Netflix are spending on productions. They are dropping some huge money on productions.
Yeah.
That didn't exist when there was the cable TV wars. There's that. I mean, that stuff by comparison is pretty low budget.
Oh yeah.
And then you add in HBO, and Stars and a lot of those other channels that are trying to transition from cable to streaming. And I say trying because I don't think they're winning. But yeah, and here's a good example of what I was talking about. I like Pearl Jam before they were mainstream, right? That person has a claim to fame that can help them in their self-identity, right? Yeah. And I mean, I can say the same thing about a number of situations. Like, not that this matters or anybody cares, but like all of my high school friends, when they saw Deadpool in the theaters, called me. I hadn't talked to them in years because I was the guy who bought New Mutants 98. I was the one who bought, the first, 4-issue mini series and was telling everybody about it. And so when they saw that, they thought of me, right? And so if you do this, they can be like, oh yeah, I'm a Patreon. I'm Patreon with that dude. I've been backing that guy for like 18 months before anybody knew he was a thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of the crowd I want to play to, because the goal is like, I am the indie band. This comic's an indie comic through and through. It's completely in the canon of, lowbrow, underground, slice of life comics, Arkham style. And so I'm hoping that, I know there's a market for that. Like our Crumb found it. Zap was self-published. Let's just, there's a long, beautiful history of self-publishing in comics. This is one of the great things about comics. Same with indie animation, actually, too.
Yeah.
One of the few avenues that you can actually end up with an Oscar nomination for a self-distributed thing. And, it's happened. It's weird, but it's possible.
Yeah. That's a good one to end on. I supported Joshua Kimball before he became J-Chem.
Oh, J-Chem. That sounds like a K-pop band. That's awesome. That's when I started doing like really like stale comics that you guys are all like, man, that guy used to be authentic.
He used to be so cutting edge. I suggest that I supported Joshua Kimball before he became J-Chem is Scott's first face tattoo.
Or my next t-shirt.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's wrap it. This is great. You guys in the chats are awesome.
Yes.
Scott, where can we find your t-shirts?
You can find them at, well, you got that link there. I think, what, did you put that up there? Somebody put the link up there. Yeah, there. So yeah, just if you, amazon.com/shop/circworks, and that'll take you to, there'll be the t-shirts there. There will be some of my books and also tools that I use to make comics. So
awesome. And those of you that entered late, the reason we're promoting this specific link is because Scott's trying to get up a couple tiers in AMP. That kind of releases some of the shackles that Amazon is putting on him, so he can sell more stuff. Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at joshuakemble.com or quarterlystories.com, and that's where you can read my comic about faith and mental illness that we've been kind of spitballing and strategizing ways to market. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Cool. And you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. Linktree/Corey Kerr will also take you to everywhere else that I'm at on the internet. And so if you are interested in learning to animate and some of the things that I've learned, then follow me on Instagram and follow me on YouTube, because there are more things coming. And pay attention as well, because I've started a new show with Jim Lujan about indie animation. So if you liked this conversation about books, you might also like conversation about indie animation.
No, it's Jim is great. I watched the first two, and it's awesome and entertaining, and it's great, and it's almost like hanging out with the two of you, which is awesome. So yeah. Good stuff.
Great. You guys rock. If you're watching this not live, we would love to know your thoughts. You can vote in the comment section of this video whether you think Josh should go the Amazon route or whether he should kickstart first. I'd be super interested to hear your thoughts on that, and weigh in on my book as well, because I think there's some differences between an indie comic graphic novel that is intended for adult readers versus I don't know who's supposed to read my children's book, but they're probably younger. So let me know what you think of mine as well. We'll see you guys in a couple days. Go make stuff.